Hi everyone, Robbie here from Plant-Based News. Today on the podcast, we're really excited to introduce you to Mr. Gaz Oakley. He's a vegan chef, a YouTuber, and now an author. Gaz comes from Cardiff in Wales and recently published his first book, Vegan 100. Welcome, Gaz.
Thank you so much for having me. So great to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So your whole journey really kind of started with social media back in February 2016 when you opened your pages on social media. Obviously, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Do you want to talk us through this whole journey and how it all kind of came about?
Yeah, I guess it didn't actually start then. I learned what I know now when I was pretty young. I started cooking at such a young age, probably around 7 or 8 with my dad at home, because he used to cook family meals every night, obviously not vegan at the time. And I just took a good interest in cooking. I watched cooking programs all the time at home. It was either cooking programs or sport. That's all I seemed to be watching, which I guess isn't too bad. So then I had the opportunity to take GCSE catering in school, and my friends couldn't believe it that I was cooking. They thought I was pretty weird, but it was just what I wanted to do. So I was very into sports, so it was sport and cooking all the way through, really. But I got really good at cooking. The teachers sort of loved what I was doing, and I had the opportunity to go to a week's work experience at the age of 15 at a local hotel which had an amazing restaurant inside it. So I did, and I literally just fell in love then. I just loved the kitchen environment. What I learned in that 1 week of work experience was the same amount that I learned in a year and a half in GCSE in school. So I realised then that that was what I needed to be doing to become the best chef possible, and that's all I wanted to do. I was inspired by people like Michael Pierre White, Gordon Ramsay, and the other top chefs, and I wanted to become, the youngest chef ever with a Michelin star. So all I wanted to do was leave school and become a full-time chef, because I knew that's where I could learn the most, rather than staying in sixth form and then going to university. So as soon as I left the work experience week, they actually took me on part-time. So after school, I'd be going into the kitchens. I think I was earning something like £2.50 an hour or something weird, tiny like that. But it was all worth it, because I was learning so much. And then when I turned 16 and could actually physically leave school, I decided to do it. My parents were so disappointed at the time, because they wanted me to go to university and stuff and carry on with sixth form. But as I said, I was so determined, and I thought that if I spent a couple more years in school doing sixth form, I would miss out on so much knowledge that I would have got. And I thought that if I did stay in school, I wouldn't get that Michelin star as soon as I wanted. So I had big dreams. Amazing. And so I went full time back at that hotel restaurant, and I was learning so much. The fundamentals of cooking, learning how the restaurant system works. I sort of picked everything up so fast, and that the chefs around me were quite impressed, I think.
Amazing.
I actually stayed at the hotel restaurant for a year and realised that I wanted more. So there was one renowned restaurant in Cardiff called a.k.a, and it'd been sort of knocking on the door of getting 3 rosettes then and potentially a Michelin star for a while. So I turned up one day at this a.k.a restaurant. I think I must have been 17 at the time. I had my CV printed off. I had a page full of pictures of my dishes that I'd taken. I can't imagine what they look like, but I took pictures and printed them off, and I just knocked the door just after lunchtime service one day and asked for the head chef, and luckily he came out and said and spoke to me, and I told him all my dreams. I told him I wanted to go to Paris and learn the proper way, and he looked at the picture. He must have been slightly impressed, because a week later he told me to come in for a trial shift. I told him I'd work free for a bit, just to get my foot in the door and show him what I could do. And they invited me back. I did the trial shift, and then they employed me. So I worked at this restaurant Le Galois for just over a year, and we got three Michelin stars. I mean 3 rosettes, and it was the most incredible experience. I learned the food we were putting out was just incredible. I really, really think we would have got a Michelin star eventually. Unfortunately, at such a young age, the toll that had on me, 80-hour weeks.
Wow.
No money whatsoever. I wasn't doing it for the money, but obviously you need to earn a living. So I was doing these 80-hour weeks on zero, like pennies almost. I had the odd break in between a day where I would, if I get it, I would go and sleep in the car in between. I wouldn't eat. It was just being so busy in the kitchens. You're constantly around food. You never really feel like it, so you're just grazing, and it took a toll on me. My parents were really worried, but I was so determined. As I said, I just wanted to keep going. I knew that was the chefing industry. I knew that's what I got myself into. But it got to a point where I had to leave that restaurant, so I left. I think I had a week off, and I thought I was recovered. And I got sort of scouted by another restaurant, actually not too far from Le Galois, and it was then sort of like a couple of years where I worked at a few different restaurants. But I think what it wasn't that my heart wasn't in it. It was just my sort of my understanding that this isn't a sort of a career where you're going to be able to get social life, where all my friends were going off to university and having fun, and I was stuck in the kitchens. I was rarely seeing family or anything like that. So I sort of had an understanding that it may not be right for me at the time. So, but I was willing to just keep going. I still had the dreams of getting a Michelin star. That's what I really just wanted.
For the listeners, for the listeners listening, what defines a Michelin star? So how do you get one?
Yeah, so a Michelin star. To get a Michelin star, you'd have a Michelin reviewer come round, and that you wouldn't know they were there. They would try the food, and I assume you would get a letter in the post. I don't know because I didn't get one, but it's one of the.
So it's an accreditation.
It's the best, one of the best accolades in the cooking industry. You can get 3 in total. I believe Marco Pierre White was the youngest chef with all 3. I think he was like 28. And to get that, you need to have, the food has to be unbelievable. Your service has to be incredible. The waiters, the ambience, everything needs to be perfect. So, I wanted to get my own restaurant as soon as I could and get all those things in place to get it. But it wasn't to be, but maybe one day. I actually got a job offer from my dad, and he was in a sales role in a building company. I actually left the chefing industry, which was really disappointing. But the 40-hour weeks and almost treble the money appealed to me at the time. So I was loading lorries for a while, and I worked my way up in that company. I got to quite a decent position 3 or 4 years later, and my heart wasn't in it though, because I still wanted to be a chef. I had the passion for food, and I missed having the sort of the creativity that I once had when I was in the cooking industry. So I went vegan overnight, and I'm sure we'll talk about why I went vegan further down the line, but I went vegan overnight, and I started experimenting in my parents' kitchen. My friends couldn't believe what I was eating. I was really keen to show them how good the food was looking, to try and encourage them and explain why I was going vegan, and sort of why I went vegan. And so I started taking pictures of the food on my phone and uploading to Instagram, and that's how Avant Vegan started on Instagram in December 2015, I believe. And it all went from there.
So it's been quite a ride. I mean, with the whole kind of advent of social media in your life, obviously with it comes an audience, with instant feedback. I mean, how does it feel having so many people kind of feeding back, or because I imagine you get a variety of stuff. You get all the vegans that support you. You'll get the meat the meat reducers who are kind of amazed that vegans don't just eat grass. I mean, how does it feel to have that almost like a sense of responsibility, perhaps, to kind of provide this content and provide this material?
Yeah, I definitely have a responsibility to do it now that I've got the sort of audience that are following me. But obviously, I'm so pleased to have that. But the reason why a lot of chefs get into cooking, some fall into the industry, but a lot of chefs get into the industry because when we cook food and serve it up to people, we want to know their reaction. Mm-hmm. We want to see them enjoying the food. So the unfortunate thing about cooking in kitchens, unless it's an open kitchen and you can see the guests in the restaurant enjoying the food, you're sort of closed off to that. So when I was a chef in the kitchen, the waiter would come back after collecting the empty plates from the guests. I would always be bugging them. I'd say, "What did they say about the food?" And the waiter would reply something like, "Yeah, they said it was great." I said, "Well, tell me more. I want to know. I want to know what they thought of the
details,
the squash,
man. Details."
Yeah, that is why I got into cooking, and obviously serving up food for friends and family. Just seeing their reactions, great. But the good thing about what I do now, I make my food on social media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube, and I'm seeing people's reactions to it. So I'm almost getting the same feeling that I wanted when I was a chef. So it's really, really great.
Now, your cooking, obviously, you're not a traditional kind of, when people think vegan food, they think a lot of plants and they think a lot of salads, but you've really kind of turned all of that on its head. Some of your dishes are like, you've done your infamous vegan steak, and there's so many things in your Vegan 100 cookbook which you look at it and you just wouldn't think that it was vegan. Have you purposefully kind of gone in at that angle to kind of make it more appealing to a wider audience?
Not purposefully. I guess in a way I actually have, but I love cooking with just the raw materials, so just vegetables and fruit. So that is definitely a large amount of my diet at home. But for the book, I've realised that, and for my recipes in general, I've realised that vegans like myself are going to be really excited about these sort of recreations or veganized classics, I sort of call them. But it's the non-vegans that I'm wanting to target, who have the potential of not eating meat, are going to get excited by something like this, because then they'll hopefully think to themselves, I'm not going to miss out on that steak, for example. There is a vegan option that doesn't involve so much animal cruelty and things like that. So that is the sort of purpose behind it. I get so excited when I've veganized a recipe, whether it be the steak or the vegan KFC or whatever. I get so excited, and I enjoy the flavor. I've been a meat eater for 20 odd years prior to going vegan, so I am accustomed to those flavors and I enjoy recreating them. So I'm sure there's millions of other people like myself who would feel the same. And when people think you go when you originally go vegan, you think you're never going to get that, but I'm trying to prove that you still can get those same flavors.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion that going vegan is about sacrificing taste and flavor. And people such as yourself, have really proven that that's not the case at all. And I think it all comes down to, that passion for food, that creativity. If we go back, 20, 30, 40 years in the vegan movement, the food was really dull and boring. Like, I've got friends who've been vegan for 25 years and, there wasn't a lot of creativity involved. There wasn't YouTube. There weren't any vegan cookbooks. And I think, it's been a real blessing to have, young guys like you kind of come on the scene and inject that creativity, because that's all it is. All it needed was some people to come along with some bold ideas and say, let's not just sit around eating mung beans all day.
I agree.
Let's be clever with ingredients. Let's be artistic. Let's focus on flavor, because ultimately that's what food really for a lot of people is about. It's about flavor. If you gave people a choice between, food, one where it was animal products and it was badly prepared, and another which was a vegan dish which was colorful and bright and full of herbs and spices, people would probably choose the vegan dish, wouldn't they? Because it looks better, it smells better. So I think it's an essential part of advocating for this way of eating, is reminding people of the variety that's out there. 22,000 fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. I mean, there really is so much choice, which,
I'm just writing that fact down now so I can quote that one. Thank you for that.
It's just great, because obviously we're often criticized for being a restrictive type of diet, when in fact it's actually the opposite. When a lot of people go to a plant-based diet, their whole world around fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes and plants and roots, etc., expands completely. So
exactly,
it's a whole new world.
Yeah, definitely.
So with the book, obviously it's out now. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it all good bookstores around the UK, and obviously if you're around the world listening, you can order it. You can order it online, Amazon.com.
Yes, yeah.
So what's some of the feedback from the book? I mean, obviously you've had some time now to kind of digest the feedback. Have you had? I assume you've had people from all over the world sending in pictures of their recipes and.
Yeah, it's such an amazing feeling seeing that. The feedback has been all but good. I was going to say no. It's been absolutely amazing. It's like the Amazon reviews are all really great. Seeing people's recreations and them looking so similar to the pictures is such a nice feeling, because some of the recipes look kind of daunting, but I've made them simple so everyone can do it, as long as you have the right equipment and the right ingredients. You're going to create something exactly the same. So it's nice to see the book's been, I think, translated into 7 different languages.
Wow.
I think that's a plant-based news exclusive here for you. Yeah, so I think they're due out in those particular parts of the world very soon. So they're not yet published, but it's all being confirmed. So it's just honestly, I'm overwhelmed. I never expected it. As well as having the Michelin star when I was young, having a book was another big dream, because, like I said, I was inspired by lots of the TV chefs, and seeing their books was so cool. So having my own, it's just it's hard to believe, and I'm so proud of it. And so pleased.
It's beautiful. I've got it here right in front of me. It's if you're all listening, you have to get it. It's 100 wonderful recipes. So let's talk about the kitchen. A lot of kind of people who kind of take the first steps into the plant-based way of eating can feel a bit overwhelmed by the idea of preparing food that's different. When people eat animal products, in many ways it's a lot simpler. You throw a piece of meat on a pan and maybe you might boil some vegetables, and that's it. When it comes to plant-based food, you do need to think about herbs and spices and adding more flavor, and also being more considerate with the flavors. What's your advice for people who are just getting started on this journey, and what kind of equipment should they kind of, what are the basics in the kitchen someone should have?
Equipment wise, definitely a blender, a powerful blender. That's so important. A good set of pans, some sharp knives, and a nice chopping board generally will get you pretty far. The blender is probably one of the most important things for me. So yes, in terms of ingredients, stock cupboard, make sure you have a good array of dried herbs and spices. I like to keep lots of sort of cartons or canned beans and pulses, chickpeas and things like that, lentils. If you are in a rush and you don't have much time to make things like dried pasta is all vegan. Well, just check the packaging first, but generally it is. So dried pasta, rice, and things like that is all the sort of the main parts of a vegan diet, I guess. I'm really big believer of eating huge amounts of leafy greens and green vegetables. So please make sure you have a lot of spinach, kale, broccoli, asparagus at this time of year. I eat tons of it, and it's great for the iron levels. So make sure you have lots of that in your diet. And I think tofu is got a bit of a bad rep actually, especially when you get a good quality firm tofu. You can actually treat it like you would maybe, like you said, a piece of meat, where you just throw it onto a grill or into a pan, just add in some sort of piri piri sauce or something like that. Or, makes it taste so good, and you can just have your sort of traditional meat and two veg type of meal using the tofu. So, and the other great thing as well for anyone starting out, like the amount of sort of meat replacement products that are in the supermarkets now are incredible. But if you want to do it yourself, you're going to have to check out my YouTube channel, because there's plenty on there also.
Graz has some great meat replacers on there, so you guys definitely need to go and have a look. It's youtube.com/avant-garde vegan. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm just looking on page 3 of your vegan cookbook. You've got lots of great vegan ingredients here. So we've got agave nectar, lecithin granules, liquid smoke, miso paste, nori, nutritional yeast, pomegranate molasses. That sounds amazing. Ras el Hanu. What's that?
You have to put on a Middle Eastern accent for that. Ras el Hanout.
Okay, tell us about that. That sounds interesting.
That is I believe it's Moroccan. And it translates from Arabic, to head of the shop. So it's basically all the finest spices that the shop would have blended up, and you can actually buy it from all good supermarkets now anyway.
Okay.
And that is great for I add it to things like where traditionally you would add things like a lot of cumin to falafel, but I love adding it to things like falafel. It's great. I love it. But yeah, that page 3, those ingredients are just the sort of hard to sort of get. Maybe you hadn't heard them before. That's why I put that together on page 3.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the liquid smoke, because that adds so much flavour to, especially your tofu and other vegetables. If you're interested in having that smokiness, so it really kind of levels up your meat replacers.
Definitely.
Now, with your book and the promotion of it, you've been doing a fair bit of travelling. Tell us about some of the places you've been recently, and have you tried any interesting vegan food in your travels recently?
Yeah, so travel is something that I really, really want to do, and especially after leaving school at such a young age and just going straight into a working environment, I didn't get to travel as much as I would have liked to. So I'm going to try and make up for that now. And watching TV chefs growing up who would travel and cook all around the world is just a dream for me, and that's really what I want to do. But I've been lucky enough in the last couple of months to go to nowhere too adventurous, I guess, but I've been over to the States. I've been to LA and New York, and it's great to see it seems as if they're a little bit further in advance to us guys in the UK with the amount of vegan restaurants and places they have over there. So it was nice to see that. I had some nice food there as well. And I've got quite a few trips coming up in the near future as well. Hopefully going over to Bali and Brazil, hopefully as well. There's a few things in the pipeline, but
book signings?
It's really all...
Or just kind of exploring food and...
Yeah, it's not all been confirmed yet, so I don't know if I should be saying it, but Bali for Bali Vegan Festival or Veg Fest, that would be awesome. But yeah, I went to LA and New York to do book signings, which is just honestly hard to believe. The thought of anyone wanting my signature just baffles me, but to do it in a place so far away from home, it's just crazy. And the most amazing thing about it all is just the kind words all these people have to say to me, because when you're looking on social media and you see the comments and the messages, it's it doesn't seem real because it's on the screen, but when you meet people and you talk to them, the kind words they have for me, I just honestly, it's amazing. People are so kind.
So speaking on that topic of being, raising your profile as what is now called an influencer, you are now a social media influencer. You influence people through the power of food, through the power of your creativity with food. When you go out and about kind of vegan events, especially here in the UK, obviously, you become quite a recognizable character. How does it feel kind of being around people who recognize you and kind of come up to you and want to talk to you?
Well, I definitely didn't get into this because I wanted people to recognize me. I never thought that was a possibility. As I said, I started the Instagram to show my friends what I was eating at first, and then people started following me more and more from around the world, and they were requesting my recipes, and the following started growing and growing and growing. So I just wanted to help people, get into veganism by sharing my recipes. And then I decided to go over to YouTube to physically show people rather than just handing over a recipe. And I never once thought for a second that, people are going to be seeing my face and recognizing me. So at first, when the following started to rise quite dramatically, and I'd go to these events, I'd be really nervous and anxious to go to these events, especially when people, like, not everyone's confident to come over and say hello. And if someone does recognize me, I'd much prefer them to say hello rather than just like look at me. It feels quite strange, but I'm getting used to it now. And it's honestly, it's such a nice feeling when someone comes over to you and just thanks me for my recipes and my hard work that I put in to help people. So looking back now, I wish I wasn't so sort of anxious, because these people that are recognizing me are only ever going to say really nice things to me because they appreciate what I do.
It is an adjustment, isn't it? Because I think you've described yourself as an introvert, haven't you? You're kind of
I guess so,
I think we talked before about it, and I think being a personality and kind of being out there in the public, it does require a certain amount of kind of confidence, because as a creative you exist in the world of food, and that is by your chopping board or by your blender, and it's like you're communicating your passion through the media, through YouTube and through Instagram and Facebook and all these different platforms. It does take some adjustment. It does take a kind of like an expanding of your comfort zones, doesn't it? Especially if you go into public or you have to speak in public. You did an event at Harvey Nicks, didn't you, where you cooked for a whole bunch of people, including myself, which was wonderful. I mean, what was that experience like, kind of doing that?
Yeah, well, I think if you cast your mind back, I was hiding in the kitchen after it because I didn't want to come out and talk in front of all those people, and that was actually the first time I sort of did anything or almost in public. So I literally only spoke for about 2 minutes, but so yeah, being in front of public, talking in front of public was a huge fear of mine for so long, and it's actually only taken me about 4 or 5 months to overcome. So recently I've done a little Waterstones book signing tour where I would there was a live Q&A in front of quite a big audience. I couldn't believe that these events sold out. So I plucked at the courage. The first one I was very nervous, but I got into it, and I'm feeling more and more comfortable talking in front of people, which is a dream come true. Amazing. Because for so long I was actually turning down things like cooking demos at events because I just thought I couldn't handle the pressure of talking in front of people. But now I'm actually booked in to do quite a few. I was at a talk yesterday with Radio 1 and I talked in front of 50 odd people there. So I'm getting used to it, and I think I'm talking about something that I like to think now I'm an expert at. So I'm not out of my comfort zone. I just need to remember that, and I'm getting used to it, which is really good.
Because public speaking, I think, is probably if you ask people, it's the number one fear that most people have. And there's so many creatives out there, people who make and create, and they want to be able to share their ideas and their passions with the world, and public speaking or going on camera is a way to do that. So props to you for taking that on and really, really challenging it. That's really, really great.
If you look at my first YouTube videos, you can see how sort of stiff and shy and uncomfortable I am, and the reason for that is because I'm not the type of person to be in the public eye. Really, I'm just sort of riding the wave at the moment, and hopefully it works. But I'm getting used to it.
Cool. That's great. It's great to see.
Thank you.
So let's bring it back to veganism, kind of your journey into veganism. Now, veganism is obviously defined as the removal of all animal products from our diet, from our clothes, from essentially from every aspect of our lives. And in many ways, veganism is a form of activism. It's a kind of actively removing our support for the animal agriculture industry, or really any industry that uses animals. What was your kind of foray into this world, and how did it all begin?
Yeah, so in my old 9 to 5 job that I had in between, obviously doing Avant Vegan and the chef in Korea I had a lot more spare time in the evenings, and as I said before, sport was always a passion of mine. I wanted to actually get back into playing rugby, so I was going to the gym every night. I'm naturally quite lean and slim, so I needed to put on weight. So I was going to the gym every night for about a year and a half, and I put on a lot of weight and size, and I thought I looked great, but I was eating a huge typical sort of bodybuilding diet of lots of animal protein and calories. I wasn't feeling good whatsoever. So I did a little bit of research, and I've always loved animals, and I in my head I thought this doesn't seem right every time I was eating one of these meals. So I did a little bit of research, and I actually watched. Actually, the whole story is I'm a big fan of JME, the rapper, who's also vegan, and he was on a radio show with Sarah Jane Crawford, who's also vegan now. It's weird how it all works. JME was being interviewed about veganism, and he mentioned that he watched this one video that on YouTube that made him go vegan overnight, and he didn't name who it was or what he watched, but he posted the link shortly after. And I got home one night after, still feeling every time I ate these meals that it didn't seem right. I watched the video, and it was Gary Rofsky's best speech ever on YouTube. I watched that. Yeah, I watched that, and I went vegan and haven't eaten or touched anything since. And of course, I phased out any sort of leather shoes I had. I never wore leather jackets or clothing, but phased out all my cosmetics. Not that I use that much, but skincare and that type of thing out, and I started on my avant-garde vegan journey. So that's how it worked. But my main motivation to do what I do now is for the animals, and encouraging as many people to either eat less meat or go vegan. If I can make them go vegan, that's amazing. But I try not to pressurize anyone, and I let the food do the talking. But I do recommend everyone should watch that video in particular. It certainly worked for me, so I think it should work for a lot of people as well. But yeah, my main motivation now is animals. But it was a combination between animals, making myself feel better after sort of poisoning myself for a year and a half of eating that high protein diet, and the effect that it has on the environment.
Yeah, so your mind, it kind of expanded. Your mind was kind of heading in that direction, and all you needed was that speech to sort of tip you over the edge. On the topic of kind of vegan / plant-based, there's a lot of kind of not battling, but there's a lot of discord that goes on between people who say they're vegan and people who say they're plant-based. Can you talk a bit about how and why you've chosen to kind of really be proud about being a vegan chef and putting vegan front and center with everything you do? Because there's an awful lot of chefs out there who are vegan, but they never say they're vegan. All their materials say plant-based, or their books say plant-based, and they almost have been, you would imagine they've been told by their agents to not say vegan on anything. I mean, what do you think about that?
There was no, I would sort of define plant-based, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I would define plant-based as someone who only eats vegan but doesn't live a vegan lifestyle when it comes to maybe something like cosmetics or clothing. And obviously, there's certain sort of lifestyle choices that I guess things like horse racing and events like that you wouldn't go to if you're a vegan like myself, or you wouldn't buy into. I think that if you're a passionate vegan, you're going to be proud to say you're vegan, and you want to give every opportunity, especially in the public eye, to explain why you're vegan and mention sort of the cruelty behind leather, for example, and not many people just think that is just an everyday sort of material that we can use, but that's the skin of an animal, and it's not a waste product of the meat industry either. It's a whole separate industry. So until people know that, and if it takes me to say that I'm vegan and not plant-based, I'm going to say that I'm vegan, and I think everyone should do as well if they are on a vegan lifestyle.
And fair play to you. I think that's the kind of boldness that we need in the movement, men and women, whatever they do, to stand up and be unapologetic about it. We don't need to be aggressive. We don't need to be, critical. We don't want to shame people, but at the same time we want to lead by example. Look how vibrant and alive you can be on a plant-based diet and be a passionate vegan as well. It's just so many options and choices, and I think I think a lot of people perhaps in the media or creators or influencers perhaps are afraid of using vegan because they're worried that it will limit the reach of their content, because they're worried that vegan is associated with that kind of, because there's that archetypal angry vegan, isn't there? The one that's shouting at people on the street, you need to stop eating meat, meat is murder, which it's part of the conversation, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily bring people over, and I think that's the fears people have, really.
Yeah, and also I always think this, the fact that vegan has always had not the best sort of stereotype, especially the food as well. So if I call myself plant-based, I'm not going to show how cool and normal veganism can be. So if I call myself vegan, I'm trying to make veganism normal. So whether that's on my personal page, me showing some nice clothes that just happen to be vegan, or I just want to show people that us vegans are normal people and we do normal things. I want to make it, and all the opportunities that I'm having to work with big brands that aren't necessarily aren't vegan brands. That's my opportunity of getting veganism in the mainstream.
Getting people talking about it, because ultimately, if we want people to join our gang, we want it to appear and sort of come across as something fun and interesting and tasty and convenient and cool and hip. Heather Mills was, we interviewed her recently, and she said, if you want people to join the vegan crew, it needs to be fun, hip, sexy, cool, trendy. Why not? If you want people to be drawn towards your ideas and your ideology, then you need to make it appealing. If you come across as angry and misanthropic and hateful and judgmental and full of kind of vitriol, people are not going to want to join your crew. So we have to be very careful with the message. And I always say to kind of people who first go vegan, please don't obviously bottle up your emotions. You're going to be angry and you're going to be frustrated, but you have to realize that not everyone sees the world through your lens yet, and that you have to be patient and you have to be understanding. And yes, of course you want the world to go vegan tomorrow, but we have to be patient, and we have to work with what we've got, and we have to work with the world in the way it currently is. And of course there's the other side of the conversation, which says 72 billion animals are being slaughtered every year by humans. We don't have time to be nice, but
it's true.
But human beings need to be encouraged. If you try and force anyone into something, they're not going to do it.
I also sometimes think to myself what my form of activism would be if I didn't have the skill of cooking. So I do understand that some people are naturally amazing at using their voice in an articulate way to encourage people to go vegan. So there's plenty of ways we can use our activism and in a way that isn't going to shun non-vegans.
It's all about the delivery. You can stand out up in public and talk about animal rights. Earthling Ed does a really good job of this. Ed has a really great way with words, and he's able to communicate ideas and thoughts in a way that helps people understand and come to their own conclusions. Because ultimately, all we can do is present the information. This is what we try and do at Plant-Based News. We present the information, and if people want to take it on board, they do. If they want to make some changes, they do. And 69% of people in the UK now having one meat-free meal a week. That's huge. And that that's just a sign that more and more people are listening. They are understanding. And maybe it's for health reasons, maybe it's for the environment, but ultimately when people start doing this and changing their behavior, less animals are killed. And it's all about supply and demand, isn't it? What gives you hope for the future? What kind of things make you, because of the world, when we look at the world today, there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. There's a lot of damage to the environment. There's a lot of negativity around us, and a lot of suffering. Like on a daily basis, kind of what keeps you hopeful?
Yeah, I definitely think there is some hope for the future. I think with all the influencers out there that are encouraging people and showing people what's going on in the world and how we can change it, I think is only positive. And seeing the people that at the events that have been coming over to me and the comments that I get, and just seeing the effect that just my recipes are having on people, making people go vegan or encouraging them to eat less meat, it's really positive. So I'm going to keep going until I get a big enough audience so I can keep trying to encourage people to eat less meat or go vegan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a momentum that has been reached over the last few years. If you just look at social media and you look at Western retail models, and you hear it on the radio, vegan is being mentioned left, right and center. Everywhere you go in all major cities, there's restaurants popping up all over the place. I was recently back in my hometown in Cape Town. 5 years ago there was no vegan restaurants. Now there's like 5. And in places like Africa where you wouldn't think veganism had kind of reached yet, the vegan society of South Africa is expanding exponentially, and it's just amazing. So positive to see. And the Google searches have increased by 400% for the word vegan. We're getting, our traffic on Plant-Based News is just going up and up and up every single day. We actually can't keep up with all the news, all the products and the stories and the all the change. And then there's obviously the advocacy as well. There's so many advocates out there on the street every day doing one-to-one connections with people on the street. There's people advocating on social media. There's people working in the media, like Sarah Jane, who you mentioned earlier. She's a passionate vegan, and she's been on the news and on the morning TV, and people like her kind of going on mainstream television and bringing these topics to the foreground is it's definitely bringing that event horizon even closer. Within that in mind, with all this stuff in mind, do you see humanity ever being completely vegan? Do you think we'll have a vegan world ever?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have to as well to save the planet. So it'll definitely happen. Hopefully sooner rather than later, so we can sort of reverse the effect that the animal agriculture is having on our planet.
What does it mean to you to be human? I always ask everyone this. What does it mean to be human to you?
What does it mean to be human? I guess to be passionate, kind, caring, look after yourself. I think that's pretty much it, really. Yeah. Really just, I think I'm not very good with my words, as you can probably tell. You can totally leave this in as well. But I think what I've realised recently, we were talking about being anxious and things like that, the anxiety that I had prior. I think, people really have to take care of themselves. And we live in a society that, on TV, it's going out, drinking, partying and all this stuff. And I did my fair share of that when I was a few years ago. But it's, we only have one body and we need to take care of it. So, I try and live as healthy as I can now, eating vegan. I work out and exercise every day. I just think taking care of yourself is not only good for yourself, but you also, it must be energy that you create, and you give off good sort of vibes to everyone you meet then. So, self-care, I guess.
Yeah, self-worth. And I think that, that ties into the whole reason many of us go vegan, is because we want to see a better world. We want to see an end to suffering, within our power. When you remove animal products from your diet, you are consciously making an effort to remove the direct cause of suffering. Obviously, we all know that when you buy fruits and vegetables, there's going to be some fatalities of some animals, small animals, birds and insects, because of the growth of those fruits and vegetables. But that's not a direct choice, because when we actively choose to buy animal products, we are actively essentially paying someone else to kill and brutally, torture animals so that we can consume them. And I think like being human to me is like it's a compassion thing. We are so. Gary Oakley, I think, uses the example of like a baby in a cot. You give it a bunny on one side and an apple on the other. 99.9% of human beings will probably, unless you're a psychopath or Damien, the demon child, you would play with the bunny and cuddle the bunny and then eat the apple. No human being is going to rip the head, or not that I've ever seen. No human being is going to rip the head off the bunny and play with the apple.
Exactly.
And you hear these stories of big motorways in America where ducks or chickens are crossing the road and people stop and try and save the animals and protect them and get them off the motorway so they're not killed. But then, of course, these same good people will go home and sit down to a meal of bacon, chicken or beef because they're just unaware of it. So we live in a very interesting and strange world.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there. As I said, I'm not amazing with words, but I totally understand. I totally agree with you.
And this is where, have you heard of Dr. Melanie Joy?
No.
So Dr. Melanie Joy is a psychologist, and she coined the phrase carnism. Carnism is the invisible ideology that exists in the world today, which says eating animals is normal, needed, and necessary. And this is a kind of belief system we're given as children when we grow up. And this belief system pervades our entire society. And when we go vegan, we awaken from this ideology, and because veganism is the counterculture to carnism, and it kind of acts against it, and this is what it means to be human to me, is to awaken from that world and say, you know what, we are naturally kind and compassionate creatures, and that killing and brutality and violence actually goes against our very nature. And that's why I think so many people are taking to veganism like ducks to water, because it just feels so natural.
It's so true. Yeah, and that's sort of the first feeling you get when you go vegan. You realize how simple it is and how much you can just thrive from it. Yeah,
exactly. So let's talk about the future. So what's on the horizon for Mr. Gaz Oakley? You've got your exciting new book, Vegan Christmas, coming out soon. Looks amazing.
So it's I never expected to do a book so soon after Vegan 100, but I was actually writing Christmas recipes for my YouTube channel last Christmas, and realised that how important Christmas was to people actually, and the festive period in general. And being vegan, people often think that you're going to have a rubbish Christmas filled with boring food, but it's so untrue. And I think the recipes that I did on the YouTube channel and the feedback they had inspired me to write this book. So I spoke to my publisher. I said to them, look, I want to put sort of a smaller book together. There's still 70 recipes in it, and they're all Christmas party food inspired. Possibly the most indulgent vegan food you'll ever see. I haven't thrown everything but the kitchen sink into it almost, and I'm so pleased with it. I can't wait for people to see it. And there's even a chapter on like Boxing Day leftovers to use up the sort of the food that you've had on Christmas Day, and I just think I'm just so pleased with it. And having done Vegan 100, I understood the process a bit more. So especially with me, I do all the food styling. So every picture you see in the book, I've cooked and styled that at the studio. Whereas a lot of chefs or food stylists would just hand their recipes over to a food stylist, who would then interpret the chefs or the cookbook author recipe to their idea of how it should look. And I think that's criminal almost, because it's taking all the personality away from the food that you've written. So having done that once with Vegan 100 already, having styled all the food and cooked it, when I went to do the same for the Christmas book, I was in the studio with the photographer Simon Smith, who we have a great relationship with. I was like a kid in Dreamland, choosing all the props. I was making sure we were shooting things in very drastic ways.
Amazing.
Because I love food photography now. So
it really shows.
Thank you. Yeah, the food pictures, if you thought the food pictures were good in Vegan 100, they've stepped up a level in the Christmas book. But even it's not all about the food pictures, it's about the quality of the recipes, and I'm so pleased with them as well. So that is in the near future. That comes out in September in the UK, and I think October in the rest of the world. So in time for Thanksgiving and Christmas. But I think the recipes are actually decent for all year round. I would eat them all year round. Maybe not the Christmas puddings or the mince pies, but
so I was going to say Christmas is an interesting time for people, because obviously in the Western kind of world, Christmas is that time with family, and there is a huge association with eating animals over Christmas. So a lot of vegans, when they go vegan for the first time, Christmas is incredibly daunting, especially with family, because you have to sit at the table and consume your stuffed pepper, probably is what you'll get.
Well, this is the thing. I'm gonna drive this book into everyone's attention. Basically, I want to get this. I'm gonna try and come up with a media plan and try and get this book on the tip of everyone's tongues almost, because I want to try and make a cruelty-free Christmas. I want people to see that in my book, and this is a plant-based news exclusive, there's a stuffed vegan turkey in my book, a recipe for that, and I want people to choose that over turkey.
That's great.
I just if I can get as many people as I can eating less animals.
I'm gonna introduce you as, I'm gonna redo your intro, and it's gonna need to say vegan chef, activist, and author.
Awesome,
because I think I think because you're bold and brave enough to take that step, to be proud to say you're vegan in the way that you are, I think definitely activists should definitely be on your your list of credentials.
As I said, I try to let the food do the talking, but the reason I'm doing it is because I want people to eat less meat. Christmas, like you said, is always a tough time. But these recipes aren't just for vegans. These are recipes for meat eaters who have been accustomed to that texture or that taste, and I've veganized those tastes and textures, and the book will hopefully appeal to them as well. And in the sort of further future, I've actually put on my YouTube channel, I don't know whether it was stupidly or I think I'm quite rash with my decisions, maybe, or last minute, but I put on my YouTube channel when someone asked me when I'm opening a restaurant, because it's probably one of the most asked questions I get on YouTube. And I said that once I hit 1 million subscribers, I'll announce where I'm going to be opening my first restaurant. I'm in no rush to do that, because I understand the pressures and what it takes to run a restaurant, having worked in them for a number of years. But to be able to feed people and spread my sort of activism through food and people actually eating it is would be a dream. So that is something I really, really want to do. And of course, I've grown up watching TV cooking programs. To be able to get on a TV show would be amazing. I've done a few little appearances recently, but to have my own TV show would be amazing. But I think just in general, having a vegan chef or vegan cook on TV, whether it's myself or any one of the other amazing guys out there or girls out there, it would just be a dream. It would just be so good for the vegan scene. But if not, if that opportunity doesn't come, I'm still there on YouTube, and I'm sure that YouTube is going in such a good direction at the moment that it will maybe replace TV anyway.
I think so. I think mainstream television style. Personally, from my experience, I definitely would see you having your own show on Netflix. I think that's where you probably would end up. I think looking at the style of your content and the way that you produce stuff, I think it would sit really nicely, and also the demographic as well. Your demographic's probably the same as ours. Millennials, 25 to 35. And Netflix is the place where these people are.
So Netflix, if you're listening.
Netflix, if you're listening.
Or Amazon, we're not, or Amazon, or Viceland, any one of those.
Yeah. Give this man his own show, please. So just before we finish, there's a question from. We've got time for one more question, I think, from our Instagram page. So we put a post out, and there was a few people that replied. The FX Vegan asks, what are your tips for starting a vegan business for young people, especially if the idea of starting a business is really daunting? Where should you begin?
Well, what I will say is that when I started Avant Vegan, I never thought of it as a business. I think that's probably a really good sort of tip. So turn your passion or your hobby into a business, but don't strategic. I can't even say the word strategic. You can also keep this in, because people on my YouTube channel always laugh at me for messing up words. But yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, strategically.
Strategically, yeah, exactly. Do it because you need to do it with passion. You need to live, sleep, breathe, eat it, and that's basically what I do. You sacrifice a lot when you start your own business, but if you treat it like it's a hobby, you'll never sort of feel too intense like a business. But I was very lucky when I started out that I had a supporting family who let me move back home and live at home rent free, so I don't take that for granted whatsoever. But I was doing every little thing I could do to help fund it. So I was taking over my parents' kitchen and cooking a load of cakes and donuts, and the donuts recipes actually in the book. And I used to sell them at vegan festivals locally, so that helped me out. But it does take a lot of investment. I don't know what the Instagrammer's question was. Business is, but put your heart and soul into it. Treat it like it is your hobby, which I'm sure it is, and be really passionate and put your all into it, and keep putting out as professional content as you possibly can. That's basically it.
Mr. Gaz Oakley, thank you very much for joining us on the PBN podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great.
Thanks everyone for listening. I'm your host, Robbie Lockie, and we'll be back next week with more veganism, food, health, fitness, and everything in between.